This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Good afternoon. Boy, everybody's so attentive. I like that. But I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of both committees to thank everybody for coming and to those joining us via live stream. I'm sure there's millions of people out there that are watching this Senate and Assembly committee on select committees on wine today. And I really want to thank Dr. Ron Kraft and the Napa Valley College for hosting us today. It's a pleasure to welcome you to my hometown of Napa, right here in one of the wine countries. I got to be even, guys, okay? And to be working with my fellow chairs, Senator Mike McGuire and Assemblymember Cecilia Aguiar-Curry. Welcome. The wine industry is significantly important to our local economy, but it also has an impact on the state economy as well. We all know that. The wine industry generates 325,000 jobs and nearly $58 billion in economic activity. It also pays over $7.5 billion in taxes to local, state, and federal government each year. Today we'll be hearing about two critically important issues: sustainability and farm worker housing. It's my hope today that we're able to take away best practices and promote those practices across the wine industry and other agricultural sectors. I will also be keenly interested in ways that the state can better support and advance progress in sustainability, fish-friendly farming, and farm worker housing. Again, thank you and welcome, and now I'll turn it over to Senator Mike McGuire.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to take a moment just to say thank you to Senator Dodd and his amazing team, along with the Assemblywoman and her incredible team, for all the work that went into making sure that today's hearing is reality. And Senator Dodd, thank you so much for hosting us, along with President Kraft here at the college, and do appreciate all your work and partnership as well, sir. No one works harder than Senator Dodd, and so grateful to be able to work with you, sir, on this committee. And the subjects that we are going to address today are the utmost importance to California's wine industry. Sustainability and fish-friendly farming are crucial to the long-term success of this multi-billion-dollar industry. But it hasn't always been so. And I grew up in the Aguiar Valley in the other wine country, where we farmed prunes and grapes for nearly a half century. And there were more than a few in my own family, along with our neighbors, who frankly, didn't think much of implementing sustainable growing practices or even talking about organics in fish-friendly farming. Now, over the last couple of decades, the focus has now changed, and the wine industry has been blazing that trail on the issue of sustainable grown fruit, along with water-smart farming practices. And this industry has been a true leader in the ag community, and the proactive approach that you have all taken has made a massive difference in farming practices, not just within viticulture, but throughout all industries. And now consumers seek a sustainable story to be able to purchase when it comes to their wines. And other industries, including, yes, cannabis growers, now look to the gold standard, the wine industry, of how to continue the farming tradition along with protecting the environment. And you have proven that these two principles are no longer mutually exclusive. And the other item, Mr. Chair, is the issue of affordable housing. And I think that has become one of, if not the top issue, over the last several years here in the Golden State. And along with the great effort of my colleagues, the Assemblywoman, along with the Senator advancing legislation such as SB 240 and AB 317, we have worked hard to ensure that the indispensable Djoser and Farmworker Housing Grant Fund will continue to thrive here in California with an additional $300 million investment in Senate Bill 3, which is currently moving along. It's the $3 billion Affordable Housing Fund that is moving through the legislature. I got to say, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair, I'm looking forward to being able to work with you, our panelists, and again, thank you so much, all of you, for leading the way when it comes to sustainability and ensuring that those who are farm workers in this state have a place to call home. And I'm grateful to be here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending today. We're privileged and honored to have you here, and we're looking forward to both panels that will be presenting today. You know, first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Kraft for letting us use this facility today, as well as Senator Dodd and Senator McGuire. Here's the team of Northern California. We work quite a bit together, and it's an honor to do so. Today, I'm looking forward to both of the panels. Sustainability, I just had a long discussion with some farmers over in the Yolo County area, having lots of conversations about California Climate Action Network and also about the Healthy Soils projects, things that we should start looking for about some sustainability. Along my travels throughout this district, it's quite big, it's 6 counties, and the number one topic with the farming community is we don't have farm workers and we don't have housing for them. And how can we do that? Let's face it, Napa has one of the top ideas for farm worker housing, and I'm honored that we provided some legislation to continue that farm worker housing here in the Valley. So with that, I think it's time for us to listen to our panelists, and we'll move on, and I believe Senator Dodd, and thank you very much again for coming today.
I'd like to introduce Dr. Ron Kraft, our host today.
Yeah, I'm just welcoming you on behalf of the college, the board of trustees, the faculty and staff. They look forward to this, and Napa Valley College, I appreciate your kind words and allowing us to do this, but the college is community college. This is our role, to reach out to the community, be a piece of it. We are a sustainable college, focused on sustainable college, also focused on our future of providing and doing our part as it comes to bear in housing and other solutions. So we're really looking forward to this. As the best community college winemaker in the state, I am happy to welcome you and look forward to today's conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to introduce, we're very delighted to have Blanca Rubio here, Assembly member from down in what district?
48th Assembly District in Southern California. So I am here to learn all about wine. Very, very happy to be here. Thank you very much. But I am from Southern California, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here first because those of us in Southern California, and I joke about this all the time, anything north of Ventura is Northern California to us. So now that this is my first year on the Assembly, so now that I've been in the Assembly, I realize that there's a whole other part of California that I don't understand, and so I'm really excited to be here, and I am here to learn everything I can about the industry. Thank you.
I think that says something for her commitment to not only her constituents, but the statewide economy and the wine industry to take time from her break to be here today. So thank you very much. And also from one of the other big wine countries in Northern California, we have from Lodi, Assembly member Jim Cooper.
Good morning, or actually good afternoon, actually. Good to see everybody here. Thank you. Me and Bill always joke around because I know during harvest season, I represent Sacramento, Elk Grove, Galt, and Lodi. I actually live in Elk Grove, and during harvest season, we know that Lodi sends about 100 trucks a day with grapes up here to Napa, so you're welcome. So it's interesting, especially the wine industry. So my background is I'm retired law enforcement. I retired when I came to the Assembly. I knew nothing about ag, and it's my district with Lodi producing 20% of the grapes and wine in California. I need to know a lot about ag. So, going on nighttime grape harvest. I know Ms. Rubio's been on grape harvest. So teaching members and other members of California what goes on and how ag is important. Everything we eat and where comes from ag. But what's ironic sometimes is you get members, especially from L.A., Southern California, that don't have any ag, and they do these bills that are, they want to be helpful sometimes, but they aren't helpful, they're hurtful. So it's really all about educating our members down south how important ag is, especially the wine industry, and what it does for California. It does a lot for California. So glad to be here. Obviously, Senator Dodd and Assemblymember Curry, Aguiar-Curry, do a great job and represent your area, and it's important that we keep that up.
Senator McGuire.
Senator McGuire, too, I'm sorry. Well, we're in Napa. He's Sonoma. So I got my things straight.
You should have heard my preamble, Jim. We're trying to be inclusive here today.
We're inclusive. And it's a global market. I mean, we're competing against South America and wine from other places. We want to make sure that California, that really in the legislature we aren't too restrictive and make it difficult for the growers and the ag folks when competing against a global market to produce their wine and get it to market. So that's also important. So glad to be here. It's summer break, so that's why I'm not wearing a suit, because I wear a suit all the time at work. So I refuse to wear a suit in the summer. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it, Co-Chair McGuire.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be now jumping straight into our hearing. So, as you know, we have two panels. We're going to start with the Sustainability and Fish-Friendly Farming panel. We have 4 experts who are here today to be able to talk about those sustainable farming practices that we're seeing throughout California. Each speaker will have 5 minutes, and I'll give each speaker a 30-second prompt when you're at 4.5 minutes, just so we can conclude our remarks and ensure that we're able to keep on time. Our first speaker today, and we are so grateful that you are here, Ms. Jordan, is Allison Jordan. She's the Director of Environmental Affairs for the Wine Institute, which oversees and represents about 1,000 California wineries across the Golden State. She also serves as the Executive Director of the California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance, and Ms. Jordan is going to be giving us a briefing on all issues statewide on sustainable farming practices, and we're grateful that you're here and you have 5 minutes, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you so much, chairs and members. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so glad that you made the trip out to this beautiful wine region. We, of course, as the Wine Institute and the California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance, represent wineries and vineyards from all over the state, but it's wonderful to celebrate here. And you already mentioned, Senator Dodd, some of the amazing economic contributions that the wine industry makes to the state. And in addition, we are really dedicated to being good environmental and community stewards. It's really, I think, the personal values of the wine community and how we conduct business. And really, we're dedicated to the idea that the land must be maintained in order to strive and to have that long-term vitality of our industry. So I have a few slides just to help illustrate some of my points, but I wanted to kind of walk you through what we've accomplished as a statewide industry. And of course, we had to sit down first and discuss what sustainable wine growing means to our industry. And we have the very common definition of sustainable wine growing, where you have to balance environmental, economic, and social considerations in pretty much everything that you do in both your vineyard and your winery. So we talk about sustainable wine growing from grapes to glass. Next slide. And 15 years ago, it's hard to believe, I've been working alongside the industry for the past 14 years, but about 6 months before I came on board, the California Wine Institute and the California Association of Wine Grape Growers published the first code of sustainable wine growing. And it was really taking that high-level definition of sustainable wine growing and turning it into practice. So we have 140 vineyard practices that are covered in the code and 104 winery practices. We're now in our 3rd edition, and we had experts from other regions that had already been working on sustainability issues, as well as academics and scientists and consultants and lots of different experts to help make sure that we had the most credible collection of best practices. And you can see from the list of the chapters in the code, it's very comprehensive in everything that it addresses in terms of environment and social and economic considerations. And we have had great success in getting broad participation of our industry in our educational programs. So we now have vineyards and wineries that represent about 80% of our wine case production, about 75% of our acreage that are now participating in the program. So they use that code to self-assess their own operations, to see where they might want to make improvements. They have a whole bunch of benchmarking tools where they can look at their own operations over time and compare them to others in the state and region. So it's a fantastic educational resource. It's also the basis of a third-party certification option. Another thing that's really unique about our program, and I think really not only for the wine industry, but industries overall, is that we've taken all of the data that we've collected through the self-assessment using the code and aggregated into statewide sustainability reports. And it's our way of holding ourselves accountable. Our stakeholders have access to that information so they can see where we're doing well and where we might need some partnerships and opportunities for improvement. And so it's a great way for us to share the progress we're making as an industry. We started with a 2004 sustainability report, and every 5 years do an in-depth report as well as interim reports. And our most recent one is 2015. I encourage you to take a look at those on our website. So as I mentioned, the code, while it was really intended to be an educational resource and is still something that vineyards and wineries can take advantage of free of charge to all, we do also now have a third-party certification option that was added in 2010. And the idea is that a vineyard or winery that would like to have that third-party verification can use an independent auditor, and they're ensuring that they're meeting all of our stringent requirements, they're measuring and tracking resources and performance over time, and they're making yearly improvements. So it's not just about meeting the bar to begin with, but it's also about continuously improving. And again, we have those annual third-party audits that really add to credibility in terms of both marketplace and potentially in public policy arena as well. So if you look at now our certification program only, we have over 80% of California wine is now made in certified California sustainable wineries, which is just unbelievable since we just launched the program in 2010. And if you look at our acreage, when you look at both our program, Certified California Sustainable Wine Growing, and some of the other programs that you'll hear about today, as well as from Lodi, Lodi Rules, Napa Green, and SIP Certified, our total acreage certified to one of these programs is 30%, which is amazing when you think about 30% of 615,000 acres. And you can see a list of them at our website. And again, we're encouraging people that want to make claims in the marketplace. This is a great way to add credibility to your claims, but at the same time, we're really about the broad adoption of sustainable practices. And through our sustainability reports, you can see that level of participation and the adoption of practices continue to grow. And just recently, we went through, as always, we're bringing the entire industry along as well as our stakeholders. We went through an 18-month update of our certification program. And this was basically to allow the use of logo on the bottle. So far, people will have signs in their tasting rooms and out in the vineyard and on some of their promotional materials. But it's really been not something that consumers could readily find available. So now with the addition of this logo, in addition to the existing ones that Napa Green and SIP and Lodi Rules and others have, this is a way for consumers to really tie practices to something that they can really support and buy into. And we expect to start seeing those wines in the marketplace at the end of this year and beginning of 2018. So we like to take pride in being leader. One of the reasons that COG and Wine Institute developed the California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance was really to position the industry as leaders, both in the market and regulatory and public policy arenas. But we like to get those stamps of approvals from outside as well. And so we were very pleased that the industry has received 3 GILA awards for our statewide sustainability program, the Governor's Environment and Economic Leadership Award, the top environmental award in the state. And we've also been recognized by trade through the Drinks Business Magazine, also again winning that award 3 times. And the other thing that I do want to mention is that we are very, very appreciative of those of you who are co-authors and who showed resounding support for the resolution for California's Down to Earth Month in April. We really appreciate that type of recognition. All of our programs are voluntary. These are incredible actions that vineyards and wineries are taking to go above and beyond existing regulation and really to be sustainable operations. And so things like this that you have done for us really shine a light on the industry and the great work that we've accomplished. So thank you for that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jordan. Grateful. Appreciate you going through the presentation. And it is truly amazing to see how far the industry has come. And it is now a part of normal life, right? Whether you are a grape grower or a vintner. And just want to say thank you so much and wonderful presentation. If it's okay with the committee, we'll hold questions until we get through the entire panel. We're now going to introduce Carissa Cruz. Ms. Cruz is the president of the Sonoma County Wine Growers, also known as the Wine Grape Commission. And she has been a champion for their mission. Their mission is to become the nation's first 100% sustainable wine region through a 3-phase program to be completed within the next 5 years. And I will tell you, Ms. Cruz is one of the most tenacious individuals who I've ever met, and I know that she's not only going to succeed, but she's going to do it before those 5 years are up. Carissa Cruz, the floor is yours, and we welcome you to the committee. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, chairs and members. It's a pleasure, honor to be here and enjoy being over in our collaborative neighbor partner, Napa. So thanks for having us. So just to start, I will just share a little bit about what I do, kind of the day job. But in my role representing the 1,800 grape growers in Sonoma County and Marin counties, so sometimes Marin gets left behind, but we do have vineyards there. I really work on two main things: protecting local agriculture and promoting Sonoma County as a world-class wine region. And so, as Senator McGuire mentioned, back in 2014, we put a really big stake in the ground and said that we wanted to have 100% of our Sonoma County Marin vineyards certified sustainable in the year 2019. So it was a 5-year goal. And why that's so important to us, it really is about the viability and long-term preservation of agriculture. And just to give you a sense of what that means for us and why that's important is we recently did a grape grower survey of our stakeholders, our members. Unprecedented, we had an 82% response rate on a survey that took about 25 minutes. So that's how much our grape growers care about talking about what they do and how passionate they are. But just some information, we actually learned in this process, when you're talking about supporting the wine grape industry, you're not just talking about grapes, you're actually supporting farmers. So for every 1 acre of grapes our Sonoma County grape growers have planted, they actually have 2 acres of diversified ag or pasture open space. So it's a 1-to-2 ratio. So really you're protecting agriculture when you look at protecting our grape growers locally. We also we pay about 60% above the minimum wage, and that's for our actual field workers, not the office workers. Our average wage is $16.34. We also offer 29% of our grape growers offer housing for their employees. I'm not sure of any other industry in the state that does that. Currently in Sonoma County, we have about 950 plus beds that we offer to our ag employees and their families. So that can be bunkhouses for H2A. That can also be second homes, granny units for foremen and their families, which is fantastic. Although we do still see about a deficit probably of about 1,500 beds when you look at the need for H2A and our changing labor force in terms of supporting ag in our county. In addition, our grape growers are very big supporters of our community. So 93% actually financially or in-kind give back. And when you add that number up, it's about $27 million annually that goes back to support Sonoma County organizations and nonprofits. In addition, they volunteer over 12,000 hours a year. So when we talk about sustainability and why it matters and why our family farms matter, about 85% of our vineyards are still family owned and operated. It's about creating and maintaining a strong community in Sonoma County, not just a strong ag industry. And so when we made our commitment to sustainability, it really was a natural evolution of these family farmers, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th generation farmers, and how do we maintain that? And so as of the end of 2016, I'm really proud to announce we have 85% of our vineyard acres are part of the sustainability program. And we have great partners, so we work with Allison and her team in terms of the California state program. We also work with SIP, Lodi Rules, and over the past couple of years, we've been able to evolve the Fish Friendly Farming Program to take a triple bottom line approach, because we really believe you can't talk sustainability without really focusing on the people and beyond sort of the environment and looking at your business as well. And so we're really proud of that number. We're over 85% now. We add up at the end of every year. So it's exciting. And as you said, tenacity is my a good word to describe me. So we're hopeful and charging forward. And I think the important thing about when you think about sustainability for farmers and grape growers is that this is voluntary. And so I know you get to spend a lot of your time thinking about how do you regulate. And what I would offer is in this program, I have no sticks, only carrots. And so all we do is say this is the right thing to do. And because, there's 148 best management practices in this code that grape growers are doing, and they're doing this because they believe it's the right thing. They're doing it without regulation. Over 40 of those assessments deal directly with climate change and adaptation to climate. So I would just ask, when you're thinking about does our industry need more regulation, that I would offer up that we are doing that ourselves on a voluntary basis and really leading the charge, not only in our county but through the state of California and beyond. So something to consider. And finally, as we think about sustainability, for our growers, the people was really the important piece. And so about a year and a half ago, we launched our Sonoma County Grape Growers Foundation, focused on affordable housing, education, childcare, healthcare, and workforce development. So we have affordable housing projects in works. We actually have grape growers partnering to create blueprints for both granny units and bunk houses, where these plans will be available for all grape growers free of charge, having already invested in the architecture and the design of the plans, available for growers to go into our local permitting and get those plans and use them on ag zone land. So our farmers are continuing to invest in our people and invest in our future, and I think that's really critical. for that. So with that, I will say thank you and happy to answer any questions. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you very much, and we will answer questions when everybody's done. I want to take the opportunity to introduce Napa County Supervisors Ryan Gregory and Alfredo Pedroza, who are here. We also have Mayor John Dunbar and Councilmember Marita Dorenbacher from Yountville. Thank you for being here. And also Rosa Segura, who is a trustee at the Napa Valley College. Thank you for being here as well. We have more? Oh, Jennifer Baker. I can see back there. Jennifer Baker also. Okay, we got it. Boy, Yountville's you got a quorum here. Yep. Well, thank you all very, very much for coming. Mike?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and we welcome you to the committee and grateful that you would take time into your busy schedules. Ms. Cruz, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. We're now going to be moving on to Michelle Novi. Michelle is the Industry Relations Manager for the Napa Valley Vintners. In this position, she not just spreads awareness of industry initiatives such as Napa Green, but she is focused on comprehensive environmental certification for all of those who are Napa Valley Vintners. And we want to take a moment to say thank you to Michelle for being able to move this initiative forward. We welcome you to the committee. The floor is yours, ma'am. You have 5 minutes. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Is that better? Great, thank you. As the Industry Relations Manager for the Napa Valley Vintners, I have the distinct honor of helping our more than 530 winery members champion their participation in the Napa Green program. And I'd like to focus my remarks today on Napa Green. Napa Green is a comprehensive environmental certification program for vineyards and wineries here in the Napa Valley. The program represents a soil-to-bottle approach to environmental stewardship and winemaking, integrating holistic management practices at every step of the process. We are proud that independent third-party certification of farms and winemaking facilities makes Napa Green one of the most comprehensive environmental certifications in the wine industry today. This program builds on our community's long history of environmental stewardship, which began with the establishment of our country's first and only agricultural preserve here in 1968, and followed by a series of local initiatives, ordinances, and the establishment of organizations that have all strengthened the fabric of our community. As a result, the Napa Valley has the most stringent regulatory framework and land use policies of any agricultural area in North America. Our valley's dedication to sustainability is rooted in our history and our commitment to cultivating excellence in every aspect of grape growing and winemaking production. That is why, when it comes to how vintners implement and deliver on their stewardship values, the details really do matter. In the Napa Green Land Program, landowners assess all aspects of their property, including farming practices, roads, and waterways, including areas not planted to vineyard. Landowners implement measures to retain soils, prevent erosion, identify and reduce harmful inputs and runoff, conserve water resources, and restore wildlife habitats to protect biodiversity. Landowners seeking to implement these beneficial practices have two well-recognized pathways to achieve certification: fish-friendly farming and the Napa County Resource Conservation District's Land Smart program. Today, more than half of all vineyard acres planted here in Napa County are involved in the Napa Green Land program. As a companion, the Napa Green Winery program supports and sustains the long-term perspective of the land program with a focus on crafting quality wines while conserving water and energy and reducing waste. The program facilitates an integrated assessment of wine production processes by evaluating the various resources it takes to produce and distribute wine. Through an innovative partnership with an organization called Sustainable Napa County, we've been able to offer our wineries something called an integrated resource assessment, which essentially means that in a one-stop shop, they get a snapshot of their water and energy use and the amount of waste that they're producing. And this saves them time, but also provides a really valuable resource. It also can save them a lot of money. Through this process alone, just by checking to see if a winery is on the correct energy rate tier, we've been able to save wineries more than $200,000. We've also been able to identify more than $90,000 in potential rebates. Napa Green wineries implement more than 100 measures that go beyond stringent compliance requirements to conserve resources, prevent waste, and enhance the efficiency of their operations, all while engaging employees on the path towards sustainability. In order to become certified and then recertified, wineries have to develop an action plan and demonstrate continuous improvement. And although the Napa Green program does not belong to the Napa Valley Vintners, we are proud champions of the program. And in 2015, as part of our mission to preserve, promote, and protect the Napa Valley appellation, we adopted an ambitious goal to have all of our eligible members involved in the program by the end of 2020. And I am very happy to report that as of today, we are more than 52% of the way towards reaching our goal. Napa Green represents a focused solution to specific local issues of environmental concern. We know that through this program, landowners are minimizing two significant sources of erosion into the Napa River, which is currently being regulated by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We know that through this program, vintners are minimizing their ecological footprint and lowering greenhouse gas emissions, which is a critical feature of creating an effective Napa County Climate Action Plan. And we know that through this program, we are providing vintners with the metrics and resources to change employee behavior, reduce our use of groundwater, and lower the number of vehicle miles traveled on Napa County's roads each year. We are incredibly grateful to our program stakeholders, including original stakeholders, the Sierra Club, and Audubon Society, and other local environmental groups, along with our partners, local agencies, and elected representatives for their continued support. I'll close by saying that we believe this program sets a strong example for how much can be accomplished through a voluntary program focused on a specific issue of concern and that is supported by broad community and regulatory buy-in. Thank you so much.
Snowy, thank you so much. And again, we're grateful that you're here, and it had to feel good when you crossed that 50% threshold, right?
It felt great.
All right. Hey, there we go. Thank you, and great job. Members, we're now going to be moving on to our final presenter on the issue of sustainability and fish-friendly farming. And Mr. Horn has a very small job. He only oversees 14,000 acres of Constellation-owned vineyards here in the great state of California. And he really was one of the driving forces behind the creation of fish-friendly farming. And since he advanced this with his colleagues, now over 140,000 acres in 5 different California counties are fish-friendly farmed here in California. Mr. Horn, we want to say thank you for your hard work. We're grateful you're here and for your stewardship. The floor is yours, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, just let me say I work for Constellation Brands. I'm uniquely qualified to be here. I'm a 4th-generation California grape grower who grew up in Lodi, California. And for the last 30 years have been in the Alexander Valley, and then a little bit after that, I was got kicked over here to St. Helena, but it's all good. And love what I do, and this industry is fabulous to work in. And I'm glad that the company that I work for allows the latitude and have the commitment. And this is a big deal. Go ahead and go to the next slide. You know, they allow us. This is kind of what we're going to do. Next slide, please. They're actually very determined that we will be sustainable, that we will be long-term in the industry, producing wines, making wines, and producing wines that people want. And how are we going to do that? Well, we do that by protecting the environment. Constellation was an early adapter to the CSWA program, and we were part of the pilot program, and all of our not all of our vineyards, because we just bought some recently, but they will be this next year. But about 13 of the 14,000 are in the program right now. The rest of it will get caught up here real quick. And all of our wineries, we have 12 different sites that we crush grapes in California, Napa, Sonoma, Lodi, Monterey, and they are all certified through the CSWA. What it has allowed us to do is, you talk to, and this farmers, right, and winemakers, you talk to any two, and you say, what do you do about this? Well, I do it like this. Well, I do it. Well, which is the best? Well, I do it like this. Well, this allowed us to say, this is how we're going to do this. And you'll see this as we go through this. But so we've created a common language in our business to identify these things. At the same time, in 1998, through the Sonoma Resource Conservation District, this program was started, and I don't remember what we called it originally, but it morphed into fish-friendly farming. And then it morphed even larger into other counties. And I have been on the board of directors and president of the California Land Stewardship Institute, which oversees the fish-friendly farming program. And I got to give all the credit to Laurel Marcus. Laurel is our executive director. She's a driving force. And she, a lot of knowledge and kind of fish-friendly farming has, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Fish-friendly farming, as you can see there, is scattered around the state. This is the North Bay. There's actually Solano up in the Sierras there, and then we have one down in like Bakersfield area. We have one ranch down there that somebody came to us and said, I want to get certified in fish-friendly farming. So you can see the ranches scattered there. The brown marks are the fish-friendly ranching. Again, we were approached by some cattle folks and said, we want you to do this for us, and so we did. And the whole thing about fish-friendly farming is the health of the fish in the river and keeping the rivers clean, and it's sedimentation, right? TMDLs, total maximum daily loads in our rivers, and minimizing those. And just through cover crops, through best practices, through the use of certain pesticides or the non-use of certain pesticides to keep our waterways as healthy as we can. And I think we've done a really good job of that. We farmers, it's all about our topsoil, right? We don't want to lose, that's the healthiest part of the soil. If you don't take care of it, that can wash away, it can blow away. There's a lot of things that can happen. So you've got to maintain the health of that soil. And if you have a healthy soil, you have the right conditions, you can have a healthy crop. So it's just very focused on erosion control and keeping the soil where it belongs. Now, erosion is a natural process. There's always going to be erosion, but we can minimize it, and that's what we do. Okay, let's go ahead to the next one. I think so. This is my last slide here, and what I just wanted to demonstrate is, so don't worry about fiscal year 15, 16, 17. Those are actually crop years, 16, 17, 18. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's a little confusing to me too, and I work there. But over on the right-hand side there, total winery water ratio, that's liters of water to liters of wine. So to produce a liter of wine, so in 15 we were 3.1 liters of water to produce 1 liter of wine, and 16, 2.9, and in 17, 3.1. So we've been doing pretty good, maintaining a very tight rein on our water use, which is really good. Again, across all of our facilities, if you saw, and I just didn't want to bring a bunch of slides because everybody goes to sleep, but the water use varies, and some of our wines are produced and sold out the door within 8 months of getting crushed in our winery, and some of them are there at the winery for 3 years before they are sold. So again, the sanitation in our wineries, the water use, how we measure it, we are all talking throughout all our facilities with the same tongue, so to speak. That was a big step for us. total vineyard or vineyard total water use in millions of liters. Again, not my slide. I would have done acre feet, but that's okay. What this translates to, you can see on the left-hand side here, water withdrawal or water use went up 34%, 15 to 17. But remember, the last 3 years we've had a drought, and the more you water, the healthier your crop is. So depending on the rainfall in the springtime and into the early summer, our irrigation practices are going to vary from year to year to year, and that's going to affect the amount of water that we use. And you can see that in 15, 16, and 17 on the right-hand side there. Last year in what would have been FY17, we had some late spring rains that kind of recharged the water table or top water of the soil, water holding capacity, and we kind of didn't have to irrigate for a month or so, 2 months. And we monitor we don't just irrigate because today it's Tuesday and I irrigate on Tuesday. We are constantly monitoring. We have 3 different methods of monitoring water use by the vine that we look at on a weekly, daily, monthly basis to make our irrigation decisions.
We have about 1 minute.
Okay. So, again, very highly managed, very scientifically driven, and yet at the end of the day, we're driving around the vineyard looking at the growing tips, and those are, you know, really that everything else combined, and looking at all the things that we do. Really, you're talking to the vines at the end of the day, and they're telling you what they want and what you need to do to produce that ultimate crop. And it's all about producing great wines from all of our regions for our consumers and putting bottles on the shelves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Horn. Grateful for your presentation, for the presentation of all of our panelists. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, if it works, we'll open it up for questions from the dais along with the members to see if we have any questions. Please.
I have a couple. Excuse me. Thank you very much for, number one, your leadership. You know, we travel around quite a bit. I farm walnuts, and I think that I know it all. And guess what? I learned right now I don't. Every day is a new day. The innovation, I think, is really important, and I wish all the other assembly members could be sitting here, because so many times I hear that farmers use too much water and they don't know how to do things right, and we're going to put in a rule for them. The fact that you said voluntary so many times really made me feel good, because I think there's so many farmers out there that do voluntary things to make sure that their crop's sustainable. Let's face it, we're looking at the bottom line every single time as a farmer. So we're not there trying to spend more money. We're looking for innovation and ways to do it. I kind of laughed with Keith when he said, you know, each farmer does something different. Well, I go about once a month to the farmers' table in winters at the coffee shop, and I listen to them bicker back and forth, and they all have a different idea on how things should work. A couple of things that I want to just point out is that we just passed cap and trade, and I worked really hard for agriculture. And I wanted to make sure that ag was at the table, and we are going to be working on some budget items going forward. And some of the things that we're looking at is healthy soils. So that's right with it, with your health of the fish. You know, when the rain comes down and the furrows get full and the dirt goes away, and eventually it's going to go to the river. It's going to go somewhere else, and it's really important that we start looking at some of the crops. I'm going to go blank on what the crops I'm going to put in there. Cover crops. Thank you very much. The cover crops and other innovations along the way as well. So I just want to commend you for what you're doing. I've learned quite a few things today. I like the voluntary, no regulatory, because I'm a farmer. And also, I have a question. Do you think we should help? How do we promote others to regulate themselves? I mean, you're saying you get a lot of your own farmers in your area regulate themselves. How do we promote that? Or what suggestions, as an ambassador for you, when I go around, I'd like to be able to tell your story.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that one of the exciting things is that there are other ag sectors that are now looking at the industry-wide models that we've developed. And so the Almond Board, for instance, developed a sustainability program that's very comparable in the idea of self-assessment, educational tools and resources, continuous improvement. And there are other groups that have come together as small specialty crop agriculture and working on similar types of programs. So I think that's really exciting. And we're seeing also the model of the California wine industry being taken up by other wine regions. So that's also wonderful. But I think it's really trying to figure out how to, and it does take some funding. So we've had industry support as well as some farm bill grants, for instance, that have really helped us. But it's really bringing people together to share those best practices. When you talked about, the farmers have different opinions, one of the most fun things we've had is the revisions of our workbook. We've done the 3 editions now, and we've had about 18 meetings leading up to each of the codes. And so it's really interesting just to hear how things evolve and how there are new best practices that come online and how there's new technology that should be adopted and how the price of technology drops over time. And so that sharing of information and best practices is something that I think any ag sector could really take on and learn a lot from each other.
I would just add, so Assemblymember Rubio, it's great to have you here, and I think it echoes Senator McGuire. You've done this in our own district, but bringing your colleagues to Napa, Sonoma, letting us get folks out on a farm, letting us have a great lunch with potentially a little wine, and talking about how important the ag sector is and how important the wine community is to California, it would be great, because I think that's the best way, is to actually bring someone into our areas and into our homes. And so I would say, I know we're open in Sonoma County. We'd love to host. We're looking at doing more around sort of an elected official sort of day to do education. It's really, really critical. So we're really happy and open to do that. So, and appreciate you being here and your commitment. So to that.
I do think that that's the number one thing, just in the short time I've been there, is the discussion on lack of education. And not everybody's open to that, but I think that right now, I just want to tell you, we have a great assembly team right now, and our assembly members want to learn, and they want to go outside the box, and so they don't like to miss a trip anywhere.
Yeah.
And if there's wine and dinner later, they'll always show up. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate what you've shared with us today.
Chair Dodd.
So I just would like to add very quickly, there's a lot of farmers, well, less and less now, but what a great job, huh? Getting people into these programs.
Yeah.
There are some guys out there that are doing the work. They don't want to tell you what they're doing, right? Honestly, I've been farming this way before these programs were in existence. Mm-hmm. Was I 100% there? No, but I was 95% there. And there's a lot of that farmers out there that understand that, and they're doing it. They just are not going to share, and that's just the way they are.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you educate people to I don't think you have any assembly people or senators that kind of go their own way, though, do you?
Ms. Horns, I'm going to go back to you here. We're going to be having a select committee hearing on wine down in Santa Barbara this fall, because we want to make sure that everybody knows that we represent the whole state. We want to hear, from everybody. And certainly the fish-friendly farming certification started with the Russian River, and then it came over here because of the Napa River and a number of other counties. But looking at the map, when you look at Lodi, the Central Valley, the Central Coast, Santa Barbara area, and even further south in wine countries we have down there, what do you think it takes to expand these best practices that you're doing, even as you're over 50% and growing, probably simultaneous? It probably makes some sense to have this starting up in other areas, because as you all know, a lot of regulations start because of people that aren't doing the right thing, and these one-size-fits-all regulations aren't necessarily good for the industry.
One of the challenges of our industry and sustainability in itself is that we do have all these different programs, and Central Coast has SIP, and it's a little different. I mean, fish-friendly farming was designed around the Clean Water Act, and we knew that was coming 20 years ago, so we started working towards that, and it's worked out really well for us. We have to do a little bit of work with this regional water quality stuff that just happened, but program is pretty much there. So as that spreads around the state, potentially, we have a lot to offer the growers, and that could be, that could be the strength of how it happens. We have been invited into, we're working on Yolo County right now, Solano County, and then, like I said, the foothill counties, as there has been need, and we're fish-friendly farming. We worked with Stanford a few years ago. They have a program where their MBAs come back and they help nonprofits, and they choose. There's about 3 or 4 groups of 10, and they choose a nonprofit that they're going to help promote and build up over a year's time. And we were lucky to be selected into that program. I guess it was about 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago. And after going through answering all the questions and a lot of discussion, and what we learned is we're an environmental sustainability. We're not a marketing program. We don't know how to do that. We're not out. What we're doing is we're analyzing roads. We're looking at riparian workways, making sure that the farms that we're certifying have filter strips, and so that we're keeping the sediment out of the streams. And that's what we do, and that's what we do well. And so as we move forward, there's a great partnership here between all of us that we just have to keep building on, and that's a challenge.
I would just add that grant funding has been critical to these programs being established and being able to grow. And as we move forward, especially with regulatory agencies deciding that voluntary actions aren't enough, even if they don't investigate whether or not that's true, we're going to encounter capacity issues. And right now we are able to enroll and certify members into fish-friendly farming and land smart at a very low cost, if any cost, because of grant funding. So, the environment doesn't have term limits, and I think we have to adopt a long-term vision for what we're trying to achieve here, and supporting these programs through consistent funding is going to be really, really critical.
I'll go on record as saying that's maybe the most quotable line so far, that the environment doesn't have term limits. Mm-hmm. Very good, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair. Member Rubio, please, and we welcome you.
Thank you. Talk about learning. If Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry is learned a lot, I didn't know you people talk to the vines. Okay, or whatever it is, but it also makes me realize the importance, and you don't understand how important it is for you to have Southern California members in your committees or in this group, because I am seriously 90% of the conversation I have no idea what you're talking about, because it's not important to me in Southern California. And the connection I can make is I am a water person. I was served on a water board, and I'm on the water committee, and so I can make those connections here. But unless you have those conversations about the funding to the Southern California folks, when it comes to a vote or it comes to my desk, I'm going to say, what do I care? And I'm not going to support that funding because I don't understand the importance for us in Southern California. So if I may, again, thank you for including me here, but I also want to urge you to have more of the Southern California folks participate in this, because I joke about it, but it really is not a joke. That we don't understand the issues. Southern California, as you all call us, we're a different country than you are, but at the end of the day, we're all one California, and unless one of the biggest growths in my short 7 months is that I am not just a representative of my 48th Assembly District out in the East Napa Valley. I represent all of California, and my decisions really affect the whole entire state. And unless you communicate that to all of our members in Southern California, then you're going to run into issues about, what do I care if you have these grant funds? We don't care. We care, but they're not important to us unless you present it as a statewide issue for us. And so I urge you to please recruit more of my group, especially LA County, up to your, not just the tours, but to really participate in these discussions, because you're going to have to give me a dictionary of all the terminology you just used, or I'll talk to my colleagues over here, because I understood water, sustainability, and groundwater recharge, and soil. That's pretty much what I understood. But so my point to you is that thank you for having me here, but you need to get more of us up here, because unless we truly become a team with Southern California, our issues are always going to be different, and they really are not. So I guess I'll leave you with that, and I'll expect my dictionary of agricultural terms, in the mail soon. So.
I think it's a wonderful point by the Assemblywoman in regards to this is an issue that is of utmost importance to the state, and unless there is more aggressive outreach, right, then we are going to be challenged to be able to meet the challenges that we have here on the ground. And we are so grateful that you are here. And I got to say, the Assemblywoman works so hard to be able to get herself involved in so many different issues, and especially on this, we are really grateful. Thank you so much. Let's go to Assemblymember Cooper, and we're grateful you're here, sir.
Thank you. Following up on Ms. Rubio's comments and Carissa's comments, I think it's important in working with COG and Lodi Grape Wine Commission. Last year we had a bill to reduce methane emissions by half. Well, half of that is produced by cows, cow flatulence and cows burping. How do you really control that? Do you really want to drive your dairy herds out of California, because California has some of the most strictest regulations, and as far as even vaccinating herds, it's very low. So we took members to a dairy that was close to the Capitol, about 40 minutes away, 5 members, and a lot of staff members and CARB down there, and really educated them. And in the end, we made a bill, in my mind, that was bad. We made it better, and it's through education. So the members are great, but also, to me, staff is the key, because some members don't have the time to get out, or they don't want to get out, whatever reasons. So that's why it's important to get these young staffers out, who a lot of them are just out of college and great, but they don't know anything about ag whatsoever. So it's incumbent on the industry and us to make sure we bring them out and educate them and show them. And that's why it's important, and Napa's close, and so is Lodi, to bring folks down here, especially the staffers, because they do a lot of the work and research, and they give the members advice and really make a difference with that. So to me, that's the key with its education process, and it's incumbent upon on you folks to do that. That's really what makes a difference, and that's what changed it. So like I said, you have some members out. Some members are very interested, and they love it, but others just don't have the time or resources, and hell, half the legislature comes from Southern California. So staff is a key. You bring them out, you feed them, give them a tour, and people show up. I mean, that happens, and it does. And the representatives are in here from COG, and they can definitely tell you that things like that work. So we've got to work together, and it's a team lift.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Member, and we are so appreciative that you are here along with Ms. Rubio as well. Thank you for making the time. Just one quick question for Ms. Cruz and Ms. Novi, consumer demand. So what do you see as trends? Obviously, this is so important for the industry as a practice, but more and more we're seeing, particularly for the younger demographic, wanting that story behind the wine or whatever they're consuming. So if you can talk about consumer demand, particularly when it comes to sustainable growing.
Sure. It's actually a great question. We just got a survey back about 4 days ago. A national survey, Wine Intelligence of the UK helped us do it. It's 2,000 wine consumers in the U.S., and we actually asked them, we were looking at some labeling questions, and the first question we asked is, what is your preference for a sustainable wine versus a non-sustainable wine? It was 94% preference.
Wow.
Wow.
Wine Intelligence UK, they do work with industries around the world, and they said they have never seen a higher preference score for something and in any industry. So And it over-indexed even more with the millennial consumer, which as we talk about wine consumption and we look at the trends there, really, really critical for our wine community and our industry moving forward. What's interesting is that another survey we did in the fall, again, wine consumers, specifically sustainability and wine consumption, was overwhelming support not only to purchase, but also, and what was great is they look at it's beyond just environment, it's about also supporting the people and thinking about business and succession and farming, and that they actually, even better, they believe that a sustainable wine tastes better. So you're getting a quality cue, which I think if you're spending that much time on your farming and you're really engaged with your employees and they're happy to be at work and know what they're doing and feel well trained, you're going to have a better quality product, right? That kind of goes without saying. So they're starting to believe that, and even more so, they're starting to be considering, again, it's research, so I think it takes a while for it to actually happen in the marketplace, but they're saying that they'd be willing to put more money into sustainable wine. So when you think about the overall economic health of California and our wine business here, continuing to move our entire state with programs like fish-friendly farming and the CSWA program around is going to be critical for one of our biggest economic drivers of California. And so the interest is there. The labeling opportunity that Allison and her team have been working on through the Wine Institute and COG, the CSWA program, is critical because consumers need that quick, right? We don't spend much time at the shelf, so they need that quick takeaway. So having a logo on the bottle is going to be, I think, a fantastic game changer for all of our efforts.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Quickly, anything, Ms. Novi, you want to add?
I would just support Chris's comments. These programs provide a mechanism for us to communicate with consumers about our sustainability credentials. But even if the research wasn't there, I think ultimately at the end of the day, our view on these programs is we're going to do it no matter what because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. Novi. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman. Thank you.
We are going to, first of all, let me thank the four of you for just an outstanding job. And normally when you hold these hearings, and I think we can all attest, generally a lot of the hearings and the content is a precursor to some legislation to fix something. And I think it's really important that we really thank you for the great job that you're doing. And these are more intended to get the word out on what's going on with all your organizations and how great of a job you've done and how we can spread this out and make the entire wine industry throughout the state sustainable. So thank you all very, very much. We are going to do a shift right now. So the next panel will come up. It'll be about 30 seconds, so hold on. Fifteen seconds. So I'll introduce you. All right, fantastic. We're going to move on right now to strengthen farm worker housing, our second panel. And we had got a great opportunity to meet Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry. Last year I sat in her seat as the Assembly Chair of the Wine Committee, and somebody that just does a great job. Also works so very hard, not only for her district, but for agriculture everywhere. And just a great representative for Assembly District 4, Cecilia Aguiar-Curry.
Thank you very much, Senator Dodd. A couple things I just wanted to pass on before we started on talking about strengthening farm worker housing. You know, I'm really interested in this topic, and if whatever we can do to make this better would be great, like right away. But the reason is that farming in winters for all these years is that we've noticed a really shortage of farm workers. And a lot of the farm workers are now, particularly during grape season, harvest, we're finding they're coming from Yuba City. And they're coming to Winters to work from 5 o'clock in the morning until about 10 in the morning. And then they travel Highway 128 and they come over to Napa. And then they go all the way home to Yuba City. And I just dread the day that we have another accident because someone's tired and that they're working hard for all of us. And so this topic is really an important one to me. I also sat on the Yolo County Housing Authority and worked on migrant housing as well. So I'm interested in finding out if you have something new for me to learn today and some great ideas, because these are the things that many of our constituents are asking us about. So with that, I'd like to welcome, first of all, Angel Calderon. He's the on-site manager for River Ranch Farmworker Housing Center. And a little bit about him is that since 2000, he's worked for California Human Development since 2000, a nonprofit that, among other things, manages, runs, and maintains the 3 publicly owned farm worker housing centers in Napa County. Welcome, Mr. Calderon. And you,
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. Yeah, we have 3 different locations. The capacity is 60 farm workers in each one in Napa Valley. Altogether, we have 180 beds. Nice places. We try as much as possible to keep them under control, nice and clean, and to provide good services to the farm workers. I really want to thank to whomever helps to put another amount of money in this program, because that helps to keep them open at least 11 months a year. So I don't have to kick out anybody before the picking season is over. Thank you very much. My feeling is this program is a model. Definitely is a model. I don't see any other housing program in the whole union. And we face challenges anyway. You mentioned the guys who are coming from Yuba City every day back and forth. A lot of people are coming from Stockton, Lodi, Santa Rosa to come to work in Napa Valley. In addition, they work at least 10 hours a day. In addition, another 4 hours over the road. It's kind of hard for them. Anyway, I feel pretty confident because I feel optimistic in the future, because I think the wine industry is a strong industry, and I see a lot of goodwill on the Napa Valley growers. They tax themselves with $10 per acre, and they increase to $15 per acre. So that means the future of this program is much better. In the next 3 years, I don't really expect any progress in the border. Crossing the border is a problem by this time. In the last 3 years at least, the occupancy in these centers are over 53,000 bed nights, and it's not enough anyway. And I don't see visas, permanent visas, at least in the next 3 years. What I can see in the next few years is the H-2 visas. Now the workers are coming in groups, and the truth is we don't have enough room for them. This is the biggest challenge we face by this time. But I really want to thank anyway Napa vine growers. Definitely they are acting responsible in this matter. To all of you, thank you. And we have challenges, but I think we are in the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I appreciate that you're here today. Good afternoon, Supervisor Pedroza. I'm going to almost say Provenza. Sorry, I just saw him yesterday. Supervisor Pedroza is the immediate past chairman of the Napa Board of Supervisors. He's worked diligently and keeping the farm worker housing to the forefront. Welcome, and we really appreciate what you've done and how you've prodded us along. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember, and also thank you to the senators that are here. And let me also add that Angel does a great job of managing our 3 centers. So I'll provide a quick high-level overview of our centers. But before I do that, I think, Napa's known for their 100-point wines. And this is said before, but it also starts with a commitment to have it 100-point farm workers. And the commitment to our farm workers is what makes it possible to have these 3 centers. Because, as Angel said, it truly is a different model where we have the 3 centers, 180 beds. The annual budget's around $1.3 million. But here's the difference. It's funded by the farm worker who pays $14 per night. And I'm sitting to one of the funders to the left of me, Steve Moles from the Grape Growers, where the grape growers assess themselves voluntarily $10 per acre. And with your help, there was some legislation that was passed, thanks to Senator Dodd, that increased that cap, the self-assessment, of up to $15. This is volunteer work that they're willing to show that commitment to having that farm worker that's sustainable. And then the rest of it is funded by the Napa County and also charity. So this is truly a private-public partnership. I think one of the things that we've seen is the demand for farm workers isn't going away. And I come from a farm worker family, and it's great to see the progression. But the reality of what we're seeing is the folks staying at the farm worker centers, they have nowhere else to go. So they play a critical role. And one of the things that we've been very fortunate to have in Senator Dodd and our Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry is really have legislation that supports these types of private-public partnerships, because instead of relying on 100% state dollars or 100% local dollars or 100% private dollars, you want to combine it all to really maximize taxpayer dollars. And if there was more support at the state level to encourage and incentivize this type of legislation, I think you'd have a greater impact locally. Because as Angel can attest, while we're very proud to help the 180 farm workers, there's a lot of farm workers that are being turned away, that are sleeping in cars or sleeping in conditions that no person should have to sleep in. But we're very dependent on that labor force. And what's also changed is the participation of female farm workers. That right now our centers are only male. So we have a lot of work to do, but we haven't had that legislation to really incentivize these type of partnerships. And Napa County is different, and we recognize that while Lodi County makes some great wine, and Assemblymember, we appreciate you guys sending wine, and if you want to take some Napa wine back today, we'd appreciate that too. But the profile is changing, and it's getting harder to attract and retain talented ag workers. And you're hearing about Napa growers, Napa contractors going down to Stockton. And that's really tough on the men and women who are trying to keep this industry going. So we really need some more support on that. But one of the things that I think we've realized in Napa County, there's always going to be a need for this type of farm worker centers, but we should also start thinking about home ownership. There's a lot of farm workers in Napa Valley that are stuck in the middle bracket of renting and could qualify for home ownership, but are constantly in that hamster wheel of having to pay high rents. So if there is other programs where we could incentivize that, I think it would go a long way. And I do want to, again, say thank you to our Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry and Senator Dodd for the current legislation. I think it's AB 317 that would make us eligible for state funding. As of today, Napa County has funded the majority of our centers with local dollars, with exception to the Djoser grants that were used to build these centers. But having some state support would go a long way to keeping these centers, but also growing the footprint, because we know that we could use a fourth model. And again, the return on your investment, as we always like to think in those terms, is you get to leverage local dollars, state dollars, and private dollars. And that's what Napa County has done. So we've been a little bit innovative in what we've been able to do. There's more need, and I think the future is just continuing to leverage those private-public partnerships to really have that impact that we've had in Napa County. So thank you.
Thank you very much. President of the Napa Valley Farmworkers Foundation, an organization that serves Napa Valley farm workers and their family members with high-level programs focusing on leadership and professional development, health, safety, and community service. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and I want to add my thanks to the chairs and to all of the members here for taking the time to hear us discuss something that is a critical need right now. I've certainly enjoyed the presentation on sustainability. It's been a passion of all of ours, but this is a new one that we really need to focus on now, the farm worker housing. I have a small ranch ourselves. I'm a past president of the Napa Valley Grape Growers and the current president of the Farmworker Foundation. I also sit on the Napa Housing Commission, and I think one of the things that I want to make clear to you is that the world of farming has changed dramatically. We know it changed in the 70s with the tasting it in Paris, but the farming methods have changed dramatically over the past 20 years. And perhaps one of the biggest changes, I want you to know that there's the real hero in this room to me is Angel Calderon. Angel saw back in 97, was it? Happened to see some farm workers pairing off and walking under a bridge. And he went down and saw that actually there were lots and lots of people camped out, sleeping there. And I think he got Father Brinkle involved, and they started talking to wineries, and that was the renaissance that allowed us to basically build these centers with the Djoser funds. So he's my man. But farming has changed for grape growers dramatically, and the search for quality, we are stewards of a very special place in the world. The soils in Napa and Sonoma, the weather conditions we have are unique in the world, and we have to function as stewards of the land in order to protect this thing that we're basically stewarding. Our quest for quality, along with sustainability, has put us in a position of no longer relying on an old paradigm. That old paradigm was migratory labor. Now we have 12-month a year, 7-day-a-week labor, 6-day-a-week hopefully. But the important thing is that our workforce is no longer migratory, theoretically. We have, as Angel said, 3 centers, 180 rooms, occupied all of them 11 months a year. Occupancy is 95% at the lowest. So it's really working well. But one of the problems we face, as mentioned by Alfredo, is that our workforce is changing. Our workforce is becoming more diverse. We've been having women increasingly. I can tell you that my last 3 harvests have been an all-woman crew, and I'm very proud of that. They're fabulous workers. The issue of diversity has impacted our workforce, where now the Farmworker Foundation is training people in leadership and in diversity, because they have to learn how to deal with not only women, but about other ethnicities coming into the field. So they're having to expand their understanding of what it is to be in a diverse workplace. I would say that the recent name change for the Napa Housing Commission, we used to be the Farmworker Housing Commission, reflects that current reality. The diversity we have is, in my mind, I don't look at our workforce that we train as anything but additional workforce. They're not farm workers. They should be at a level of respect and admiration, because they bring a very high level of training to this job. We couldn't grow the crops we grow without that high level of training, and that's why the Farmworker Foundation is committed to giving people the skills, the education, starting with English, the education to develop professionally. And I think that professional development is something that not everybody can take the time to go back to school for, get a degree. But if we can give them a certificate and say, I'm a better tractor driver now than I was, or I can drive an ATV, I can carry a nifty 50 behind me, there are all sorts of things that we can show, we can demonstrate that they've spent 5, 10, 20 hours getting this certificate. And we mail it not only to the farm worker when they complete it, but to the employer. So the employers come along with the understanding that, hey, these guys are working hard. We're improving the workforce. We're improving the farming, and it's better for everybody. We certainly need another Farmworker Center. But as has been said, we need to reflect on the diversity of our workforce and accommodate them. We have 3 barrack-style facilities. We need another one in the south part of the county. There's no doubt about that. But we also need to look, as Alfredo has mentioned, we look at ways to address our diverse population in a way that our existing housing stock is already reflected. We've got single occupancy houses, we've got small houses for small families, we want to be able to have a larger family, and most important to me is that we get all of our workforce spread throughout the community. These are citizens. We have Dia de la Familia every year, and Dia de la Familia is to introduce our workforce to the many services available in this community that can serve them. We don't want our workforce to be alienated, we don't want them to be separated or in any way separated from the overall dominant community. So it's an important part. We want to assimilate people into the community at large. We've been fortunate, I think, as was mentioned perhaps earlier, since 2011, we've been fortunate enough through the generosity of people who come to some of our fundraisers and growers in the community. We've raised over $3 million strictly for workforce training, for workforce enhancement, for English classes, for something that will help people demonstrate that they're really ambitious and want to learn the business. We've trained over 12,000 individuals and families over the years, and this year I think we've had over 1,300 hours of training already. So we're excited about the future. We have big challenges. We're talking locally with our elected representatives about ways in which we can address housing. We need to expand the housing. We certainly thank you for your assistance. It's taken us a few years to get through, but you were successful this year, and we certainly thank you. That money was running out. We were eating our reserves for years, for 3-4 years now, and it was going to run out this year. So you got us over the edge. We're no longer having to rely on our reserves to do things like roofing repair or fixing heaters and things like that. We now have a balanced budget once again. But we look forward to future cooperation. This public-private partnership, the growers and the farm workers doing the majority of the funding is a model that we feel can be shared with the rest of the state, if not the country, in getting growers to identify with the workforce that they have and to realize how important they are and how much they have to be trusted. So it's a pleasure to be here before you, and thank you so much for all you've done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moles, and I have a couple questions for you later. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. Dr. Robert Wiener has been the Executive Director of the California Coalition for Rural Housing, one of the most long-standing, lauded low-income housing coalitions in the United States since 1981. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the committee. The California Coalition for Rural Housing was formed in 1976 following a Farmworker housing conference that was sponsored by a guy named Jerry Brown. And he's back and we're still here. So our members own and operate over 80 farmworker housing projects around the state with over 4,100 units. If you look back about 60 years ago, there was a famous documentary produced by Edward R. Murrow called Harvest of Shame. Now, if you fast forward 60 years, we're still having harvests of shame in California. We still have tens of thousands of farm workers living in squalor, living in makeshift accommodations not fit for human habitation, third world housing conditions, out of sight, out of mind. Now, the state has tried to make an impact over the years, and this state, compared to other states, has had a very robust farmworker housing program, although it hasn't been enough. Next slide, please. Okay. So these are the programs that we currently have that are dedicated or assist farm workers. The Office of Migrant Services was created in 1965. There are 24 migrant housing centers. I hope I'm not taking your speech. And they're open 6 months a year to folks who live at least 50 miles away from the migrant center. And they're, as I said, they're open about 6 months a year. The mainstay farm worker housing program that provides for year-round permanent farm worker housing is the Djoser Farm Worker Housing Grant Program. It's legislation that we sponsored in 1977, and that creates housing for rent and purchase. It's a very versatile source of money and has produced over 13,000 units of occupationally restricted farm worker housing statewide. The California Self-Help Housing Program is another program that has been used to house farm workers, created in 1981. It supports something called mutual self-help housing, and that is where groups of 8 to 12 families, under the supervision of a community-based nonprofit, build each other's homes over about 10 to 12 months. Each family earns sweat equity. That sweat equity then becomes a down payment to secure a really beautiful USDA mortgage amortized over 33 years with 1% interest. That program in California has housed a lot of farm workers, providing really the only pathway to affordable home ownership. In fact, it's often combined with the Djoser program. And finally, the Farm Worker Housing Assistance Tax Credit Program. That program was modeled after a similar program in Oregon. It accrues $500,000 a year of credits, and unfortunately it's been undersubscribed. We're making some changes in that bill right now, or in that program right now. That's Assembly Bill 571 by Eduardo Garcia. It would allow the tax credit to be used in so-called hybrid farm worker projects that are mixed occupation, with farm workers living side by side with non-farm worker low-income families. And that bill is moving through the Senate right now. Now, for many years, farm worker housing was, let's go to the next slide, please. Let me talk about these 3 programs first. These are programs that provide support for farm worker housing, although they're not necessarily occupationally restricted. Within the low-income housing tax credit program, there's a 20% set aside for rural areas. Within the multifamily housing program, there's also a 20% set aside. And within the new cap and trade program, there's a 10% set aside for so-called rural innovation areas. Now, all of those can support farm worker housing. Okay, next. Okay, now for many years, we funded farm worker housing through continuous appropriations in the state budget. Now, that all changed in 2002 when the voters approved Proposition 46. Now, that proposition authorized $200 million for farm worker housing. Then in Proposition 1C in 2006, the voters authorized another $135 million for farm worker housing. But believe it or not, that money was exhausted by around 2010, 2011. And we have not had any new money for farm worker housing since that time. As a result, the pipeline for farm worker housing has really shrunk dramatically. Now, we have an opportunity to rectify that. We have SB 3, which would provide at least $3 billion for affordable housing, $300 million for farm worker housing. The Senate has passed that with a supermajority vote. It's now in the Assembly. And perhaps even more importantly is Senate Bill 2 by Atkins, which would create a permanent source of revenue, a recurring source from fees on real estate transactions, not including home sales. That would generate about $250 million to $300 million a year. 10% of that would be for farm worker housing. In our view, arguably, that's the most important housing bill that we have in the legislature, because it's not tied to the budget, it's not tied to periodic bond sales and expensive campaigns that we have to run in order to get the voters to agree. Okay, so that's something that the leadership, the Senate, the Assembly can take the leadership on right now and vote for, to create at least $25 to $30 million for farm worker housing every year. Okay, let's go on to the next. Okay, I'm going to skip this entirely because you guys know a lot more about Napa Valley than I do, about the migrant centers. Just one point about that, though, and that is how innovative and revolutionary it is that the Vintners in Napa County agreed voluntarily to self-assess themselves based upon square acreage in wine production or grape production. We don't know of any other vintners anywhere else in the country or any growers in the country who have agreed to self-assess themselves to help pay for the cost of providing decent and affordable homes for their workers. So kudos to Napa Valley. We would love for Napa County. We would love for more vintners and growers to follow their lead. Okay, next. Just a couple of quick examples and some pictures of farmworker housing. Next. Okay, so Riverside County is a great example of taking an old migrant housing center from the 1930s, which was disheveled in awful shape, and converting it to decent and affordable migrant and year-round farm worker housing and other uses. Now, in 2007, one of our members, Coachella Valley Housing Coalition, acquired the property at the urging of local agencies, 253 cinder block, deteriorating small units with no AC, no heating. Okay, next. And now they're developing a multi-purpose development on that site that includes farm worker housing, family housing for rent, as well as for senior citizens, self-help housing for first-time owner occupants, commercial development, and open space. They built the first 85 units already, and now they're building the next phase, and they hope to have the entire thing built in 10 to 12 years. And let's see what we got out of that. Next. That's what it used to look like, and this is what it looks like now. Next. Beautiful apartments, 100% occupationally restricted to farm workers who are renting. Next. Another similar example is an old Bracero camp that was, again, acquired by a nonprofit, South County Housing, and repurposed as year-round farm worker housing. It was a disheveled site again, failing septic, insufficient water, hard-packed dirt, no services, no recreation, no nothing. Next. The reason I'm showing you this is because this is a project that was done post-redevelopment. As you can see, it took a dozen different financing sources to make this deal work. The project was opened in July 2016. You can imagine the brain damage that it takes to cobble together 12 different funding sources, federal, state, and local. That's why we need the CERNA program to come back. That's why we need a farm worker housing tax credit program. That's why we need self-help housing. Next. This is what it looks like. 44 new apartments, a community center with 3,000 square feet with a computer lab, playing fields, a basketball court, landscaping, just a beautiful development. Next. One more project, okay, in Kern County. Now, this is new build. It's not retrofitting an old labor camp. But it took years, over 10 years, to get this project approved because the water district did not have sufficient sewer capacity, the sewer district, excuse me, and it was issued a cease and desist order so that they couldn't develop it there for 10 years. Self-help Enterprises was sitting on that property. Finally, because of media and organizing pressure, including pressure from the Dolores Huerta Foundation and others, the site was finally had the capacity to build, and this is what they built. This is Rancho Lindo Apartments. Okay, energy efficient, large community center, recreation areas, importantly close to an elementary school, park, other kinds of services, medical care, educational classes are provided, a lot of after-school programs. It's not just about the housing, it's also about the wraparound services. Next. Okay, and finally, farm worker housing is very innovative and cutting edge. So you look at that project that's 100% occupationally restricted in in Woodland, which was just opened up a couple years ago. 46 units of farm worker housing, 100% net zero energy. This is the first apartment building in the United States that has that certification. They're producing enough energy not only to serve the needs of the residents, but to sell the overage to the grid and make money to pay for the operating costs of that property. We have mixed occupation hybrid projects like this one in Avila Beach. We have mixed tenure projects that are occupied by farm workers who are renting and owning. And we have intergenerational housing for retired farm workers and farm worker families, where the retired people get to hang out with the kids get to hang out with the seniors, and it works really, really well. Next. Okay, so what we need is, number one is we need money, and number two, we need political will. And even in rural areas where you have open space, the cows, as well as the people, sometimes resist farm worker housing. But we need to organize, and we need to make our voices loud and to push for farm worker housing because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will have questions for you too. Okay, and last but not least is the woman on the group, and welcome Catherine Emmon. She's the Deputy Director of the Division of Finance Assistance with the California Department of Housing and Community Development. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here today. I appreciate being invited by the members and to serve on the panel with the local partners who are helping to provide farm worker housing in this area. A couple things I wanted to mention as we're talking about this is kind of the nature of farm worker housing and the nature of the farm workers and how it's been changing over the decades. We have an increasing percentage of farm workers who are undocumented or unauthorized to work. And the reason that's important, it's increasingly difficult for them to find affordable and safe housing. Developments that are, for example, assisted with USDA rural development money require right-to-work papers. So that increases our challenges in California and the agricultural regions. Also, the percentage of migratory farm workers is decreasing over time. Estimates of farm workers are difficult to come by. There are numbers as low as 400,000 to as high as 800,000. But the amount of farm workers that migrate is decreasing over time. It's gone from 43% down to 16%. But that's still a substantial number of farm workers in the state, and we've heard a lot today about farm workers who are commuting it sounds like 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 miles to work, and I think that's a continuing trend. Rob gave us a good background on our state programs, and as you are well aware, we're kind of in between bond funding rounds. Since the 2000s, we've primarily relied on state general obligation bonds to fund the Djoser program. We're pleased that there's legislation pending, hopefully, to recharge that program with $300 million. So that's a very important source of funding for permanent farm worker housing. Again, even though it's not a formal partnership, generally a lot of housing authorities or nonprofits are the providers of that housing and the developers of that housing, and we know that it's very important to continue to work strongly with them as we go forward. A little additional information on the Office of Migrant Services Centers. The 24 centers provide housing. There's around 1,900 units. We're housing around 11,000 farm workers and their families. It is family housing. There's small apartment units. They provide 2 to 4 bedroom units. Farm workers generally, the different centers draw from different regions. Some centers draw primarily from Mexico, others primarily from Texas, Phoenix, or Arizona, and those areas. One of the things that's been challenging, as you have at the local level, is to sustain those centers and to upgrade and improve them as time is going forward. Beginning about the mid-1990s, we had a lot of centers that did have very serious health and safety issues, and we embarked upon a plan to get them primarily reconstructed. We had looked at how we needed to do that to prevent units from going offline. And as we went forward, these are general funded programs primarily, and it was as the budget resources went up and down, it was often difficult to get state funding when it was needed to do those reconstructions. So as a result of that, about half of our centers now have USDA rural development money in them. That was a very important source of funding to get those centers reconstructed, and it took basically a decade to get through that program. As we're going forward, as the costs of running the center, primarily we see increases in utilities and staffing costs. Again, the local governments, primarily the housing authorities and some nonprofits, are our partners in running the centers. They are the on the ground, on the boots, day-to-day operators of the center, and we really depend on them to do that. But we do have challenges at identifying and providing resources for repairs and maintenance and rehab to prevent getting into a situation again where we need to go through and do major reconstruction of centers. In both, we typically, as we're coming to the end of bond measures, we typically kind of bundle up, we'll have remnants of CERNA money, we'll bundle that up, and with the help of the legislature we get it authorized to use for OMS centers so that we can do those larger repairs or replacements to keep the centers going. And another as people have mentioned, we're getting more farm workers in the state that are coming in on the visas, and it's very challenging to find housing for those people. EDD has met with us to see if we had any capacity in the OMS centers that might be useful. But like your centers here in Napa, on statewide basis, we have very high occupancy rates. Typically, they run 85% occupancy and higher. And what that really means is that the farm workers weren't there for the full period of time the center operated. It doesn't mean that we had units that were not occupied that season. It means somebody came 2 weeks late or 4 weeks late or left a couple weeks early. To provide continuity, most of the housing authorities allow the occupants that were there the year before kind of a first opportunity to reoccupy them the next year. So we do have that challenge of providing opportunities for people who are coming new to the centers. They typically are already fully occupied from continuing residents, and that turnover is quite slow. So options going forward, we all need to be creative in looking at farm worker housing, and we encourage the local governments to look at all sources of funding they may have. A lot of your jurisdictions may be entitlement jurisdictions for CDBG or home funds, meaning they get their funding directly from the federal government, and those that aren't, the funding comes through the state of California. CDBG is quite flexible and it can really be used for things like infrastructure or planning in advance of expanding or building new farm worker housing. And so we really encourage you to look at that. The home program does provide for housing development of apartment units, and I think at least one of your slides that Rob was showing you today had home funding in it. We are about ready to go out with a new CDBG NOFA in the next month or so, and we'll have $31 million available for the smaller counties and cities, and those funds are primarily used in the rural areas of the state. We also, this coming year, will have National Housing Trust Fund money. HCD is administering that statewide, so both entitlement and non-entitlement jurisdictions can qualify for that. And again, it's deeply targeted funding for affordable housing. And we'll have that NOFA going out on the street in December. And two last things to mention. Rob already mentioned the greenhouse gas reduction programs, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities. We did have a jurisdiction down in the valley, Wasco, who's replacing a fairly run-down center, and rather than investing more money into that older Cerna project, although that one has some history, it went way back, they're building new multifamily housing a little closer into town. So we encourage the jurisdictions to be flexible and to think about that as one of the funding sources as we go forward, especially in light of the fact that the legislature provided, ongoing authority for that program. And lastly, it may be a little bit out of the box, but where it makes sense to do some farm worker housing close into town or in town, there was legislation to help support the development of accessory dwelling units. And in any given jurisdiction, while that's not a global solution, all solutions help, but it should help to standardize what local officials and local building departments are requiring to develop those, what I would call distributed housing. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your comments today. We'll ask the panel if they have any specific questions, if that's okay.
To Catherine, and maybe Rob wants to opine on this too. For the last couple of years, we've really worked hard to get the budget allocation for this program, which represents roughly about 10% of the total budget of the farm worker housing budget, roughly. And when you consider what the percentage of funds that's going for a lot of Central Valley farm workers, we're not complaining about that, but I would like to see a situation so every single year it's not a brand new budget ask. We're asking for a lot of things for a lot of different entities, and we'll continue doing this as long as we have to. But I'd like to see something like this. Maybe we could partner in there and have some conversations to have this be some sort of continuous appropriation through HCD or something on some program. We don't need to develop it here, but I'd like to see if you'd commit to at least sitting down with us and talking about that. And it sounds like we've got an opportunity for public-private funding with some of these grants that you spoke of that are going to be available, particularly if these new bills come across the finish line like I hope they will. By the way, I'm co-authoring both of them.
Thank you. And as Rob said, the permanent source is going to be very important going forward. We're always grateful when we have general obligations bond authorized, but they come in peaks, and we have peaks and valleys there. So the perm funding source will help provide a baseline that doesn't fluctuate like we've been experiencing.
Right. Yeah. With respect to the permanent source bill, SB 2, we've been talking about creating a permanent source for the last 2 decades or more. And, Darrell Steinberg tried to push one over the goal line, and so did Mark DeSaulnier. Now, we're at the 20-yard line now. We're in the red zone. And we're in the assembly, and unfortunately we have about 10 or so fence-sitting assembly members, and we need to get them on board. I know that some folks took a hard vote on the gas tax and cap and trade, but what's more important right now than providing support for affordable housing and farm worker housing? And that may be a hard vote for some members, but the payback will be manyfold in terms of decent homes, a more thriving economy. So if you could help to get those undecideds across the finish line, that would be great.
Senator McGuire?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, all of you, Supervisor. Good to see you, and thank you all for all the hard work from their panelists. Quick question on federal funds, and I have 2 questions. This past winter, and thanks to the work of the Assemblywoman and the Senator as well, we had individuals who were displaced by flooding, and new rules had come down in regards to using pass-through dollars coming from the feds, that we were unable to house those who may be undocumented with this federal funding source. And then what we're also hearing is potential budget cuts that may be coming down for housing dollars that could be invested, whether it's your traditional affordable housing or farm worker housing. So I'd like to be able to see your crystal ball and outlook on what is to be expected here over the next 3.5 years when it comes to federal dollars, since we rely so heavily on those and being passed through. One on restrictions, and then the second would be, are we looking at a budget cut?
So I don't have a crystal ball, but we.
Have you heard anything from your circles?
Well, even in the federal fiscal year that was just funded, we had some concerns about, what was going to be available, and we pretty much got, the budget from the year before, so at least we had stability there. What we're hearing in terms of what's being proposed in terms of where it looks like the Congress is to do a relatively small haircut from the previous funding level.
Great. Mr. Weiner?
Yeah, so the budget that the administration submitted would have effectively killed the rural housing program. Fortunately, it's dead on arrival. The budget that's being talked about now for fiscal year 18 would basically fall in line with the sequestration, which would be about a 5% across the board cut for all rural housing, Now, how that's distributed within the rural housing programs depends upon the priorities of the current administration. Will the Farmworker housing program take a bigger cut than the home ownership program or the rental housing program? So that remains to be seen. But the mainstay Farmworker housing program, Section 514, 516, has seen deep cuts over quite some time, not just with this administration, but previous administrations.
Thank you so much for the clarification.
Okay, I have a few questions. First of all, I realize even in Yolo County, we're having the diversity of the farm workers changed. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot more women working in the fields. Is there anything that you're thinking about currently? Is there the same locations here in Napa Valley that you would be putting, if we could figure out how to fund this, because I think it's really important, where would we put those farm worker housing, on the existing sites with the men, or would they be at a different location? Have you thought about that yet?
I'll make some initial comments, Assemblymember. I think geographically what we have in Napa works. You have something in Calistoga, Salina, and then Napa. I think what we've talked about is something, as Steve mentioned, in South County, and really accommodate that family structure. So if there were some funding opportunities for that to accommodate that, I think we'd locate it in the South County, in the Carneros area, which is what we discussed prematurely.
I was approached by someone from the Napa Valley College Board, and they threw out an idea. So I'm going to throw it out at you and just see what the reaction is, and don't throw tomatoes. Is to possibly think about some housing here on this campus for families and for the farm working families as well as the women. And the reason being for that would be an allotted time potentially that they would be able to go to college, their children go to college, and they have housing for 3 years or whatever it was to get the student through school. So that was something that came up, and I thought, that's really innovative, because I think we have to think out of the box. Many of colleges, not just this one, I'm not sure the acreage, so I'm not going to stick my neck out, but there are places in our communities that do have space. And I just always like to have them near transit, obviously, and near colleges. So that's just a thought. On your farm worker training, kudos to you, because I love it. I think everybody should be mentored and to feel good about themselves and know that they were one day in the field and the next day moving a forklift and helping move freight around in a yard or whatever is absolutely incredible. And I really appreciate the fact that everybody has a chance in their life to go up, and that you are providing that really gives me a lump in my throat, because everybody wants to have and improve their life. So I think that is an amazing thing. I have witnessed this up in Lake County as well, that they do some training, and they all got a cowboy hat. And I thought that was so cool. Is like, that was kind of like their symbol that they had gone through a program up in Lake County. So I wanted to commend you on that and continue that. And I'm sure other places do that, but it really is important.
Thank you very much. I would mention one of our new programs last year was to have a mentorship program where our concern is elevating what we've called a farm worker beyond the status of just a farm worker. We're trying to give them the skills to be respected in their professions because they are highly trained and they do an excellent job. We have a Dia de la Familia, as I mentioned. We also have a pruning contest. We invited the families to attend this year so they could see with pride how skilled their mothers and their fathers are. And we want to provide the incentive to consider this kind of work in the fields at a higher level. And so we're now working with the high schools in Napa to provide young people who will work as, I think we had 36 applications this year, and we put them around in a wheel program to 4 different vineyard management companies, and they basically take a look at every aspect of farming, from working in the field to working in the office to working in the labs, and to show the path to entry that is not to be downgraded, is to be respected and even coveted. We have scholarship programs where we've actually funded one young man who's gone all the way through this college with one scholarship and all the way through Davis with another scholarship. So we have the funds available. That's how we're deploying them. But it all hinges on a change of mentality. We have to look at our workforce as highly skilled and to be respected and to be incorporated into the overall community as best we can. And I know a lot of us here are doing that, are working that.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And my last question is I wanted to thank Mr. Calderon for what you've done for this community and to bring this forefront as to be innovative, and that it is not a pilot project, but many people ask about this project, about the farm worker housing, and why is it kept up so well? My concern is, and I also direct this to Catherine, is every single time we have projects, the state funds something. Let's take roads. We don't do operations and maintenance very well. And that is always left out of the budget system. And we need to fix that because we shouldn't have to wait for them or anyone to have a housing situation that's falling apart right in front of our eyes. So is there any way to streamline or make sure that we have that budget number in? It seems like we miss it. I mean, I just feel like, what? Why are we having this? We have these facilities and
well, one of the challenges is in terms of investment in the development of the property itself. Again, it's generally been coming through general obligation bonds, and there's a restriction on those funds that they're used for capital improvement. So it is a challenge that we share with you in our own OMS centers.
That's all I have. Do you want to close up? Oh. Okay, we can do both. So we've decided that we'll do public comment right now. And if anybody from either one of the panels would like to come up to the microphone here and give some ideas, some constructive criticism only. This is your opportunity. So if anybody would like to speak, you get 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jeff Ellsworth. I was hoping that visitors from the other areas would stay because I wanted to mention this. I grew up in the Napa Valley in a wine industry family, was recently elected to the St. Helena City Council. But I'm speaking today as a private citizen. When we talk about sustainability in the wine industry, we also need to talk about the industry's sustainability within our communities, as well as the sustainability of our democratic process. Discussion of the economic benefits of the industry is incomplete without a discussion of other impacts, environmental and health impacts, binge tourism impacts, erosion of due process at public hearings, threats to community water sources, and the morphing of agricultural zoning into tourism and entertainment use. Sometimes I bring big signs to meetings like this that say things like cumulative impacts, or what about the cancer? Since Napa County is one of the highest cancer rates in the state. I didn't bring those signs today, but I thought those issues should be brought up because they're part of the equation. As we are dealing with an imbalance in our county that needs to be corrected, and I speak with citizens in other wine country areas around the state dealing with similar impacts. I appreciate you being here today, everybody. It's an industry that I love. I grew up in it, and we need to work together to address the impacts and correct the imbalances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else like to speak? Hi.
Hello. Welcome to the Napa Valley. The search for housing goes way past just farm workers here. Napa has one of the highest homeless populations per capita in the state of California. And there is an Assembly bill, AB 1506, to repeal Costa-Hawkins, and this might help all the renters in our community establish homes. And you could look at a city like Richmond, California, who recently passed a rent control legislation to help out their community, and that might help out our community here in the Napa Valley.
Thank you very much for your comments. I forgot to ask people to state their name. Would you mind stating your name?
Yes. I'm Ray Johnson, Executive Director of the Wine Business Institute at Sonoma State University, and thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. Our research has documented several things that underscore what we heard in the testimony today, namely that philanthropy in the wine industry is deeply felt, and you see it among grape growers and winery owners and those who work in the industry who really want to make a difference locally, and so much of that philanthropy is documented to be given locally. There's a deep ethos about contributing to the local region, and what we also have seen is that an overwhelming majority of the residents in these farming communities that are centered around grapes and wine actually love the wine industry, and they love to see the bucolic beauty of grapevines, and they bring their friends and family when they come to visit to tour and enjoy the region. And what it has done in a place like this, as compared to Silicon Valley, is allow agriculture to go on in perpetuity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Supervisor.
Good afternoon and welcome to Napa County. My name is Belia Ramos. I am the chair of the Napa County Board of Supervisors. In addition to welcoming you here, the comment was made about the possibility of locating farm worker housing here on this site, Napa Valley College. And what I would say, and the ask is, should the consideration ever be made that the state of California would be willing to donate land, do not look just to Napa Valley College. You have Napa State Hospital, you have the Veterans Home of California. State of California is one of the largest landowners here in Napa County, and land acquisition is actually one of the largest impediments to any type of affordable project. Certainly with the generosity, as was noted by the prior speaker, of the wine industry, certainly with CDBG funds and other funding sources, we can get creative with our calculators and we can find those sources, but land acquisition is by far one of the most difficult obstacles to overcome. So look beyond just here. Look to all your APN numbers that you have here in Napa County, and we'd be more than willing to talk a contribution of land to further our goals, our mutual goals of ensuring that we have farm worker housing and other affordable sources of housing. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Rosa Segura, and I'm speaking as a citizen and nothing else. thank you for being here, and thank you for being at the Napa Valley College. This is great. I just wanted to make a comment about funding for migrant farm worker housing or for farm worker housing. When we built the River Ranch Center and Mr. Phelps generously donated the land, there was an issue with where the funds came from and if undocumented workers could live there or not. And it came up where, as long as they work for agriculture, they deserve to live there. Because as many of you have stated, they're the ones that do the work. And so why limit them and why send them back under the bridge or what have you? So that's just something to keep in mind. They work in the fields, and so they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Miller with the California Association of Wine Grape Growers. One of our growers wanted to attend today, could not be here, but she asked me to make a brief statement on her behalf. She would like to participate in a lot of the farm worker housing programs that are available. Her problem is while she has 20 acres that seems to meet the threshold, she has 2 parcels with 10 acres each and doesn't meet the local requirement. I've submitted that information to your staff. I think it's probably more of a local issue, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. Also, I wanted to acknowledge your holding this hearing. The 3 of you are strong supporters of this industry, wine grape growers and the wine industry. These hearings allow for an opportunity for people to come together, collaborate, and I wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for that. Mr. Cooper mentioned a while ago that we will be doing a harvest tour coming up. It's an annual thing we do. You'll all be invited to that. We intend to invite members from all over California and staff as well, pursuant to Ms. Blanco's and Mr. Cooper's suggestion, and I hope you can make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak? So I want to just assure you that this conversation doesn't just stop here. We are open to any conversation that you'd like to have with us regarding anything, obviously, but on the wine industry, please don't hesitate to call us, to call our staff. Senator Dodd and myself share an office here just down the road. I forget the address, but I'd like to introduce my staff that's here today just so you know who they are. First is I have Angela Pontes, who's my legislative director. She's in the Sacramento office. I have Tracy Crumpen, and she's the deputy district director here. She watches over all my field team. I also have Laura Beltran. She's here in the Napa office. Feel free to give my office a call anytime, whatever the issue might be. But we do want to assure you that I took down about 6 pages of notes here. And I assure you I'll go through those, and if I will put something on my website about some of the answers or some of my concerns that I found out of this. I truly appreciate, I learned a lot today. I didn't know about the fish, hold on here. I didn't know about that, but I knew about healthy soils, and I think I can help you out on the well, let me see, I'm going to get it right here. Family fishing, anyway, you got fish farmers, yeah. Yeah, that's it, I'll get it right. So I appreciate all of you being here. Anybody have the last comments as well? And we can go have a little reception.
Yes. First of all, since you started on that, I'm not going to diss my staff by not introducing them. My chief of staff, Ezra Shaban, is here. Also, Logan Pitts, who has been working the computer screen, and Tom Barty is kind of manning the front. I appreciate them. We also should recognize our congressman does a lot for our district and for this industry as well, and he's represented here by Myra Ayala. Welcome, and maybe others. Can't see out there everybody, but we appreciate you being here as well. I'd also like to thank my co-chair, Mike McGuire, and also Chairwoman, Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry. Man, they are just incredible partners. And, Mike talks about me being hardworking. I tell you, I was the assembly member when he was the senator up in Lake County. This guy's insane, the amount that he works. And he's just a great partner. All 3 of our offices are on the same floor. which is, I think, a good thing. But we're right across the hallway for each other, and all the staffs are here that working hard. Thanks also to the panelists. You guys just did a fabulous job. Both panels, incredible job. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd also like to thank Dr. Ron Kraft and the college trustees. I think there was about at least 4 of them that were here today, and we thank them very much for their attendance and their legislative staff. I also want to turn the floor over to Senator McGuire at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair. Again, when we take a look at what's going on in the atmosphere of government and politics these days, one thing that I think we can all assure you is that it's a unified front here, and being able to work together to be able to tackle some of the toughest challenges. And really grateful to be able to work with the two of you, the rest of the committee, and all of you, and we cannot say thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedules to be able to be here. A couple items quickly on the housing bond that's moving forward, which has also been a priority for all of us, is that there is now going to be a carve-out for rural affordable housing, and as we know, for farm worker housing as well. And that's the other approach that we've all taken, is to ensure that small cities and rural counties also get their fair share of resources that are flowing from the state of California. And in fact, there's going to be about $150 million for cities between 50,000 and 1,000 people over the next 10 years if Senate Bill 3 passes. On the issue of sustainability, it has obviously become a way of life, and it is also consumer demand. And I think that's the one area that we'd like to be able to focus, is how we can take that to the rest of California, and also looking at additional sectors as well. Because truly, the wine industry has been leading the way. Thank you all for being here. Really, really grateful. I'll turn it back over to the chairperson to be able to close.
Okay, once again, thank you, everybody. This hearing is adjourned. Thank you.